Hello Internet, Enduinn here. Today I want to share with you the latest version of the Miniman project I'm working on, and we are working on. I don't know if I introduced them last time, but I do have a few people helping me with this, and they have been for quite a while, and a lot has been done. So, first thing, I'm just going to very quickly run down all the major changes. There's a splash screen as everything loads. All of the art is updated to custom stuff that we created. There are several songs now, and music tracks that play while you're playing a match, and there are lots of sounds to go with everything. There is movement animation. There aren't attack animations yet. I think a couple things have it, but that's it. There have been some changes in how all the resources are loaded at the beginning. The entity AI has been created and made somewhat smart. The player AI has been created, but it's still dumb and just builds buildings randomly, whatever it can build. There is a currency. There are credits now, which you actually earn and use to play. The pathfinding has been updated. The user interface now sort of exists. You can see what you're doing, and there are buttons and descriptions of things. There's a tech tree that's almost fully implemented. I think there are a couple details that need working out, and you can actually win a match. So now I'm going to go through everything in detail, but first I'm just going to jump in and show what it looks like for a game to be playing. Hopefully you can still hear me. Actually, let me pop out, toggle this, and jump back in, which is something you couldn't do before. You can now start and stop and restart matches. There's a little bug. You might have heard a lot of sounds playing, and that was the creation of all of the initial buildings. It has a sound associated with it, but it also plays when you first start a match. So I'm gonna build a couple things and then sort of let this run in the background, just so there's something to look at, not just staring at a menu screen while I babble. So there's a splash screen. Is one of the major things that I did because there started being a lot to load. Let me actually come and turn the music way down just to make sure that I'm audible. I can come back and turn it up in a bit when I talk about the sounds. Let me just rebuild these buildings here. Whoops, clicked incorrectly. There we go. So there's a splash screen. There's lots of stuff to load now, and so instead of just sitting there looking like it's frozen, it actually has a little bar. And a lot of development work went into making that possible. There are issues with loading on different threads, loading assets with OpenGL. So I had to dump them all into a queue and then loop file by file through as I load. Wasn't too hard, but there's the splash screen. I think all of the art you see right now is new and made by the artist that's helping, who wasn't an artist, but he started working on it and he's iterated, and this amazing looking stuff, from somebody who couldn't draw basically anything, in 2 months, he went from basically not being able to draw to this, which is very impressive, I think. So he's done, I think all of this is his stuff. Because there was some previous things some other people helped with, the tile set maybe is just an adjustment of what the previous artist did. But anyway, all of the art is there. As you can see, there is movement animation for everything. He looks sort of like he's running in one way, he moves in a different way. They're directional. All of that's done. There are different buildings. All of them have art. There are some attack animations. If you see, as these guys come up here, this should attack. There you go. You see it shooting out of there. So it does. A couple things have attack animations. Most things don't. So they just sort of walk at each other. Although these guys have attack animations, he'll drop down a poison cloud because he doesn't attack like most others do. He creates a poison cloud that lingers and it damages everything underneath it. So I think that's it for the art. You saw the main menu art that was updated to be, again, not be something that was ripped, so we can actually use it now. There are several songs that play in the background. I don't know if this was the one playing previously, but it's now playing. There are a few of those, and there are lots of sounds. I don't know if you can hear it, but there are a bunch of different sounds. There are some, this thing has a big powerful gun that it shoots. There are these little rat creatures that are attacking and they make sort of a hissing sound. These make a different sound. The axe guys make a different sound when they attack. So there are lots of different, and when you build a building, probably couldn't hear that when I placed them, but let's see. So it did play a sound for when these were created. I'm probably going to get killed soon. But anyway. So, there was some, in the background, the way resources are loaded in, I had a bunch of assets, and I changed that up. So now it just loads everything in a folder and puts it into a map with a name. And the name is pretty much just the file name without an extension. And then I can refer to that. And it's much easier to add in new art and replace things without having to update some file, which is the way I had it before, which maybe doesn't seem like it makes a big difference here, but it was just, it was a big change in the development, so that's what I'm talking about it. I do recommend loading things somewhat generically. It's not, anyway, yeah, I don't want to go into detail on that. The entity AI, so all the entities, they seem to be doing things, right? And so they are doing things. They're doing a lot of things. I don't have a lot of time, so I don't want to go through all the details because there's a ton. But the main things they do is explore, attack, and pick like the importance of a target. Not all of the details have been worked out perfectly, but one of the things they'll do is like right when you start off the game, whoa, something major just happened there. I think they must have killed a building or something, and now they're flooding up to attack someone else. Anyway, that distracted me. So when you start the game and you can't see anything, because you can see now mostly, I mean, not everything is working correctly, but the general idea of not being able to see behind this is there, right? He's disappeared now, and I can't select him again. It's not working over here, but it does work for the entities and for the players, the enemy AI. If they can't see something, or if your player cannot see something, they won't pick it to go attack. So right when you start the game, they don't know there are even other enemies around the map. So they pick just a random place and go explore there. And then there is a lot of decision making about, like, when you're walking along, like he probably found this guy to go attack, and he turned and decided to attack this guy because the other one was running away, and he couldn't reach him and couldn't shoot him. And the other guy was coming at him and was really close and was also an enemy, so he changed his mind to go and fight the one next to him. There's a lot of decision making like that that's being done. There's also decision making like, you notice these guys are ignoring everyone. That's because they can only hurt buildings, so they don't consider these guys as targets they can deal with, because they're just going to sit there and not be able to hurt them. So they skipped by them and went to try to kill this thing. And I think I'll leave that as is for the one more thing about the entity AI. All the buildings I can see have been destroyed. Let's see if there's no. Oh well. So there are some things about the buildings, like you saw there was a building here that could attack. This building can attack. It's your main fortress that you have to defend. When an entity comes up, another thing that it looks at is whether or not it's a building and whether or not it can attack. So if one of these guys, the enemy, runs over and starts attacking this, that's good, right? You want to destroy the enemy building. But if my guy comes up and starts shooting the enemy's going to go, okay, I'm currently engaged in combat against this building trying to destroy it, but I have a more pertinent threat attacking me that could kill me. So it changes its mind to fight that. And so that's sort of the entity AI as it stands now. There are some bugs with it, but it works pretty well. They don't do things like moving out from under a cloud of poison that slaughters them. So they're not smart, but they do make decisions. And as you can see, they auto-spawn. I think that was the case before. And that's how the game is going to be played as well. I may not have even mentioned that, but the final game is basically you're building the buildings, getting the economy, and the entities automatically spawn and go fight the enemy. The player AI right now isn't very smart. It just builds things randomly, but it does build. Unlike before, it was made, as you can see, it's trying to build a building, and it will save up money, and then whenever it has enough, it'll actually build a building to keep fighting. So if I didn't start with 10,000 free credits, I wouldn't be doing so well right now. And let's see, one more. Let's build a building. There's one more thing. So when you build a building, it no longer instantly appears. Instead, your main fortress will spawn a mechanic who will walk over there, and he has to make it to that location. Let me see if I can do this. Let me see if I can just come down here and build a building right there. So here's our little mechanic. This might take a while. He's going to run over there and probably die along the way. So his pathfinding isn't very smart. There's some issues with pathfinding I need to fix. Oh, he died. So because he died, your building is gone. You failed to build it. Right now, I don't know if I'm going to change this, but right now, you just lost the cost of that building. You don't get the money back. And that part of the reason for that is so you can't just come build, because the mechanics spawn for free, so you can't just come build, you know, a dozen buildings over here with no cost and no risk, just right up in your enemy's face. You have to balance, are your mechanics going to be able to get there and survive? Because every one that gets killed, like that guy, one more hit could easily kill 3 of these, and I already lost like 2 or 3. That's hundreds and hundreds of resources that are gone. And then there was, well, he did just barely manage it, but if he stands there, he has to wait until all of the entities clear out from under the building before he builds as well. So if you are being attacked by a bunch of entities at your main base, and you try to build a building on top of them, your guy will just stand there and get slaughtered probably quickly, but he won't be able to build it because everything has to clear before he does. So let's see, the credits. You get credits. Let me do a couple quick changes. Let's build this and this and this. So this is a marketplace. I'm just spamming building a ton of them, which you can't normally do because you don't normally start with the cheaty tens of thousands of credits. And oh, I wanted to mention the guy standing there, but he stopped. So each of these, look how fast this is going up now. Each of these generates like 2 credits, like every every second or so. And then your main building and the main outpost building I had over here that died generates 8 if it's not fighting in combat, which is important because your outpost over here, it's really good if you can just let it sit there and defend while you try to build up your economy or something. But if it's constantly fighting off the enemy's stuff because you don't have anything to fight them and you're not putting pressure on the enemy, then you'll get this money, but you'll lose 8 per second, which is like the equivalent of 4 of these because your outpost isn't able to build. So you got to balance and figure out what the best way to do that is. But this generates credits now, and if you don't have enough credits, you can't build the building. I have too many. I was gonna say let's find out if I'm wrong or if there's a bug with that, but let's not worry about it. This guy can't hurt buildings, so there might be a bug in his AI, but he's just standing here. He's like, I don't know what to do. Yeah, he's trying to attack this. There does seem to be a bug with their AI, because normally they do ignore buildings because they know they can't hurt them. But these are broken. So the next thing is pathfinding. There was a lot done with pathfinding for, as you might imagine, optimization. It wasn't as simple. Like originally I just did some A-star stuff and it worked great. But there's just too much, right? If you want to have hundreds and hundreds of guys running around constantly changing their destination, then that was one of the main problems, is they have to, if they're following another guy, if let's say this guy found him, who's he targeting? I set some debugging to see who people are planning to attack. These guys are just exploring right now. Oh, there he goes. He changed his mind. Well, they're not being nice and showing me, but let's say one of these guys here, let's turn that off, pick this guy. So if he's going to come over here and attack this guy up here, he'll find a path to him, but then this guy moves. And every step, this guy is moving to a new tile constantly. So he'd have to refine the path over and over and over and over again. And with this many entities, all finding paths every step, it's just too much. And there was one other problem, which was they find the perfect path, but what happens when they get in big clumps, which will happen a lot in a game like this where things auto-spawn and auto-fight, is they'd have some really wonky decisions about like trying to find where they're going, or they would think they'd search the entire map to find their way into like back here to fight a guy when they're all the way over here because one guy stood in the way. When they could be walking all the way over here, instead they'll be like, oh, I can't get there, and they'll constantly search the whole map. And that's a big problem. And so one thing that I did to the AI is they only consider another entity in their way if they are close. So this guy right here, when he goes to try to find a path upward, he will look at him and consider these guys blocking him. But this guy up here is not blocking him. He would just try to walk right through him, because by the time he gets there, the guy might be gone anyway. Probably will be gone anyway. So there's a lot of changes like that. The user interface you've been seeing a little bit of. There's a mini map which you can click and drag around. You can scroll with the mouse like this, which I like. This is the way I like to scroll it. But there is another option. I shouldn't have done that now. Whatever. You can turn on a different kind of scrolling, phone scrolling, which is something I had a lot of discussion with the other developer helping me about, but I think was a good idea because so many people scroll with their phones now. I think a lot more people will be used to scrolling like this, where you click and you drag the document where you want it to go. So that's now an option too for just quick. And then there's still the arrow keys you can use. Back to the user interface. Let me go back, which here's another thing that's possible. You can start and stop matches and quit and exit and change options, and the options persist when you close the program and restart as well. So that took a bit, but got that in there. So I've got my scrolling back. Let's see, the user interface. So here's how you build. There are a lot of tweaks about this. There's some highlighting. These are all buttons. And as you can see, when I hover over these, it shows you over on the right what this is. Up in the corners, how much it costs, a description of it. And if you click this, you can get it, it'll stay open. Otherwise, you can just hover, grab, and build. Or click, grab, build, right click to deselect, grab another one, build. Oh, that guy was in the way when I tried to build, so it didn't allow it. Build, right click to deselect. And so you can leave this open and then turn it back off if you want. So it stays out of your way, but it doesn't have to. You know, you don't have to constantly open it over and over if that's annoying. Or if you want to build a lot of things. There's the mantis, the new animation and such for it. You can also select entities. I don't believe that was possible before. And as you can see, this one particular one is selected. If you select multiple of the same type, it shows you the type you've selected. And if you, let's see, if the one you select dies, oh, that was, oh. If the one you select dies, it shows you the type. So you can see details about, like, what is this thing, right? It's like, oh, it's this. It's an anti-structure vehicle. It's a bulldozer. And as you can see, like I mentioned earlier, this one is fighting. It's very powerful. You can also, there's this is sort of the information panel that gets out of your way if you're not selecting anything. So there's as much visibility as possible. This FPS will go away in the final version, by the way. The fortress is trying desperately to defend me right now, but there's a lot of guys, and I'm not really building any. Salvage does not work yet, but it will be a thing, except for these two buildings won't have it, because this is your main building that you must, if you lose this, you lose. And then the outpost is a very powerful, similar building, but is mainly just out front to sort of hold off and be some initial defense to work with. So this, unlike every other building, can actually be upgraded. And as you'll see, I can't build any of these. And I don't think the detail's in there yet, but in order to build this, I have to upgrade my fort. And I upgrade it, which this graphic will change, but I upgrade it to a fortress. And then I can build more things. So the tech tree here has been mostly implemented. There are a couple tweaks that need doing. But let's see if I can get this built before the guy dies. Yay, it worked. So if I do that and I upgrade it to the top tier, I have all the buildings now I can build. What happens if I try to build a bunch of mantises? If my mechanics get killed... Oh good, they're ignoring them. Which is actually bad. Oh no. That's a smart thing, because these guys, one thing they're doing is they're looking at this building, which can attack them, and they're looking at the mechanic that's walking by that cannot attack them, and so they're picking the thing that can shoot back and trying to kill that first. So I have a bunch of mantises, but they're not smart enough to come up here and defend. Oh well. So that's pretty much it for the user interface. Oh, there's how much money you have up here. There'll be a couple tweaks to how this looks. And then there's the main thing that I didn't mention. You still can't build on certain types of terrain, like can't build on the water, you can't build on the sand, only the dirt. And your visibility here, you can say to build in, off in over here, but you have visibility, and I think I mentioned it before, entities do care about that. Like, if he can't see a building up here, he won't go after it. He doesn't know it exists. It's got to be visible. And then the enemy player AI as well. Ooh, I wonder if he'll make it. I think he's actually going to make it. Unfortunately, I think I built... Oh, this does produce guys. But the guys this produces... doesn't seem to be producing. Oh, yeah. The guys it produces can't actually hurt these guys anyway, so it didn't do much good. So that's the user interface. You got the minimap. The minimap will be changed and updated to have the masking to where what is visible. That's just not done yet. And the last thing would be is you can actually win and you can actually lose. Unfortunately, I went and built a ton of mantises, which are very strong entities. So the chance I'm going to lose very soon is low. Ultimately, they'd probably kill me. But when you lose all your buildings, you lose. And if you don't have a fort, you can't build anything. So once you lose this, it's pretty much over. And I might actually change that to end. Anyway. Well, let's look at one last thing here, which is the music and the sound. It's going to be cranked up quite a bit. There's some tweaking to do with this. But they're currently pretty loud. So start the game. There's the music and all the initial building sounds. I don't know if you could hear that. It's a very subtle when I place this. It's probably way too quiet to hear. See my men marching off, exploring the map. So they're just picking random locations. Oh, he found a building. Because he found that building, I think... Where's this guy gonna go? Yeah, so the first guy's just picked a random place to explore. But the next guys that spawned, or later some guys that spawned, could see this building, so now they're going to attack it. These are powerful. Alright. Let's back out of that so I can talk again. One of the things that we did do with sound, and there's some tweaking to be done with it, but will definitely be in the game, and we did already put in a little bit, is if the sound isn't within your view, it's not going to play. So if there are 100 guys over here fighting, and there's just tons of sound happening, but you're over here, it's not going to blast. It's not going to play, so you don't have every sound on the map constantly playing. And then one other thing is, there's a limit to how many times a single sound can play. So it's okay if you want to build 50 of these, you won't blow out your ears by having 60 riflemen all shooting at the same time. Let's see what happens. And this is the fun part where you just build a stupidly large amount of things. But no, normally you won't be able to, right? I'm starting with the cheaty amount of money. Army is going forth. So this is a debug mode that probably won't be available. But you can sort of see they're all looking all over the place, going nuts. Just deciding these guys are all moving in to attack that. Then they all pick in random directions and pathfinding and so much going on. This FPS is actually limited, I think, because I'm recording. Normally I have 120 easily until I get about 500 or 600 entities on the screen. But you notice how many guys there were shooting, but it didn't sound like that many, and that's because we limited it. So I think that's all for now. I've kind of droned on a long time, but there was a lot done. There's an edge to the scrolling, so you can't break that. And you should not be able, hopefully you can't build off the map. Good. And yeah, I believe that's everything. If you want to hop off now, go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and just build a billion more of these guys and see what happens. See if I win, which it looks like I'm about to. But I'm just going to run the video out until the match ends. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Well, if you're still around, I will go ahead and share this bug that you can clearly see, which is that there's so many guys here that could be shooting at these buildings and destroying them and then getting in closer to kill this and aren't doing it. And that's partially because they see that this thing can reach them and shoot them, and so it can attack and this building can't, so they try not to waste their time shooting this while this thing is killing them. But there are some issues with that clearly need to be resolved here. I may try to put in getting them to move forward more if they can fire. But there are a couple other things going on. You see the frame rate is dropping. Of course, it's not surprising. 650 guys, like I mentioned. Although, look at that. As soon as the building died, all of those guys found new paths, and it took like no time at all. They just instantly went to their new place. Oh, yes. Well, I did win, and that was because there were 4 players on that map. Oh, which is new. I forgot to mention that. I just added even the ability to have 4 players. And there were 4 players, but there's still a bug where it just sees like, did a player lose all of their buildings? Then the game's over. That needs to be fixed. But the slowdown is intentional because there are so many questions and issues with how to write a game. This is the development side of things. With how to write a game if it's not tied to the frame rate. What happens if your computer can't update all of the guys' paths at once? Then I have to start like picking and choosing who gets to move next, or like who has priority over who else to shoot. And then you have some things like in StarCraft where the Dragoon unit just loses the ability to fire and Marines slaughter them. Like the Marines get to shoot, but the Dragoons don't because your computer can't keep up. I didn't want that to happen. I want everything to work. If you can't run the whole frame, it will just take a second longer. And I'm going to do a few things so you don't end up running out. Having your computer slow down like this. A, I'm going to fix it so they don't just bottle up like that. And B, I'm going to make sure there is a limit. Maybe even a selectable limit, but there's a limit on how many guys there are. So if I test it and, I've only made it optimal enough to have 400 guys at once, maybe there will be a limit of 400 guys. Something along those lines so that it runs decently. But that's everything. Thank you very much for watching and being patient if you're still here. And I can't wait to finish this up and share it. There's not a ton left to do, but it's definitely still some work. And I'll see you then.